In southern Germany, there is a mysterious grave, one that many believe is evidence of the supernatural. It belongs to a 17-year-old girl who died of tuberculosis. Every day a new flower can be found on her grave, as if left by a relative. Now that may not sound strange, but she died in 1867, so unless her relatives are more than 150 years old, something weird is going on. For over a century after everyone she knew also died, flowers continued to appear on the grave. It is unknown who or what is responsible for this. Graveyard workers swear they have no idea who brings the flowers. Nobody seems to know, and it's been happening for so long people just accept it as normal. But it's not. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying I'm against flowers being put on graves. I try to avoid getting into that kind of political debate. Some believe the descendants of her relatives do it, or maybe a good Samaritan with a sense of whimsy. Being in Germany, there are countless dark legends that surround the grave. Perhaps the ghost of Caroline Walter herself leaves the flowers, fetching them at night when most locals are asleep. The truth is, we may never know how a new flower ends up here every day, and it may never stop happening. Either way, the grave of Caroline Walter has become an eerie tourist attraction. It is not the only mysterious grave out there. In fact, some dwarf it with their strangeness. My favourite is the alleged alien gravesite in a small Texas town. It dates back to 1897 and is claimed to be America's first alien encounter. According to reports, some kind of UFO crash-landed in Aurora, Texas. Crashing into a windmill at 6 AM, locals were baffled by the wreckage. A metallic spacecraft was found, with a humanoid pilot. Described as not of this world, he was already dead when they arrived on the scene. Not knowing what to do, they buried the alien like they would anyone else. By the time the story was picked up by national newspapers, the supposed alien had already been buried. And so in an otherwise ordinary cemetery, there is what many believe are the remains of an alien. There are also many who believe the whole thing is a hoax, and they're probably right. The problem is there's no way to prove it. According to local law, the ship was thrown into an abandoned well, which does sound bad, but to be fair, it's hard to know where to store the spaceship. Today no one knows where the ship is, but at the crash site have been found odd shards of metal. An ideal solution would be to exhume the supposed alien corpse and examine it, but doing so would be illegal. Texas law forbids exhuming bodies without the knowledge of their next of kin, but since he was an alien, he has no next of kin that we know of. So for now at least, we have no way of knowing for sure if this grave is that of an alien. Speaking of aliens, there is another strange gravesite in Mexico. It is not haunted or said to house a Martian, but in many ways it's more creepy. On an unmarked grave sits the large doll of a baby. Strangely, its eyes seem to follow you, staring at you from every direction. Why anyone would create such a doll is a good question. Another is why it's in a cemetery. It is little more than an optical illusion, built to have this exact effect. But this footage has many claiming the doll is haunted. Some say it was possessed by the spirit of whoever's grave it sits upon. I don't believe that rumour, but I believe it more now that I've seen this footage. Strangest of all, there appears to be a bottle of blood beside the doll. It's almost like it was designed to be a baby vampire or demon. The exact location of the grave is unknown. All we know is it's somewhere in Mexico. The footage went viral 4 years ago, and the doll has since come to be known as the Doll of the Devil. The most famous burial site I will mention today is in Barbados. It is known as Chase Vault, and was built on the grounds of a church with a tragic past. Built in 1724, its owner was never actually buried there. Only after 8 decades of abandonment would the vault finally be used, when in 1807 a Mrs. Goddard died. Then bizarrely, the tomb was bought by the Chase family just 1 year later. A 2-year-old Chase had died, being buried alongside Mrs. Goddard. In time, her older sister would also die and be laid to rest. Then in 1812 their father died too, allegedly from suicide. But when the tomb was opened this time, something strange greeted them. The coffins were not in their proper places. It looked as if they had been thrown around, with one leaning up against the wall upside down. Now at this point I would assume the vault is haunted and set fire to it. I'd probably burn the church down too, just to be careful. It was unclear who could have vandalized the grave. Protecting the tomb was a large stone at its entrance, one that took 7 men to move, so it's unlikely the crime was done by petty vandals. It's just too much effort to go to. So from that day in 1812, all kinds of rumours took hold. These were superstitious times, with the disturbance being blamed on ghosts, demons, and even vampires. Still, it was written off as an isolated incident, and when Mr. Chase was left inside the vault, it was resealed. 4 years later, another Chase family member died, because apparently that family was cursed. When again the tomb was unsealed, it was found the coffins were in strange positions, as if violently thrown around once more. It was a disturbing sight to see, but again the coffins were reorganised and the tomb sealed. Other tombs in the area were examined, but no sign of vandalism found, so either someone was targeting the Chase vault, or something evil was hidden within it. The tomb was opened again in 1819. By now it had grown so notorious the governor of Barbados took a personal interest. He was present when the vault was opened this time, and with his own eyes he witnessed the phenomenon. At this point the first coffin was falling apart, and the skeleton inside visible. As a deeply religious man, the governor was not happy, so he had the coffin cemented to the floor, which to be fair was worth a try. But if anything, this seems to have angered the ghosts, and when Chase Vault was opened again it was worse than ever. It was 8 months later, and the governor decided to have the tomb reopened one more time, just to be sure. By now it won't surprise you to hear that the coffins were again out of place. It would be weird if they weren't. So at this point the governor just gave up, ordering their corpses be relocated. Ever since they have been buried elsewhere in the cemetery, and the tomb has been abandoned. The governor ordered an investigation into the affair, but no answers were found, and since only one tomb was affected, it could not be due to an earthquake, or at least that's how the story goes. There is little evidence that any of this actually happened. Some believe the whole thing was a hoax created by the Freemasons, but it's probably at least true in part, and in the 1800s the story spread far and wide, with influential figures like Arthur Conan Doyle blaming the supernatural. Whatever version of the story is true, Chase Vault should probably remain abandoned,